Good morning, evening, or night, wherever you are, welcome to WHAM Today. Take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let's drift through the whispers of today's world, one quiet thought at a time. As we wrap up Thursday, 8th May 2025, let's see what stories are unfolding around us. Guide their countries through turbulent times. Singaporeans returned Prime Minister Lee Hsien-loong's People's Action Party to power, albeit with a reduced majority, signaling a desire for continuity amidst economic uncertainty. In Australia, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese secured a stronger mandate, reinforcing his government's commitment to climate action and social reform. Turning to Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also managed to maintain his position, navigating a challenging political landscape. RDA, China, President Xi Jinping met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow, marking his 11th visit to Russia, where he pledged to stand with Putin against hegemonic bullying and maintain a deep relationship during Moscow's WC commemoration. The leaders exchanged warm words ahead of Victory Day commemorations, which he described their meeting as in-depth, friendly, and fruitful. They also took a united stand on trade amidst escalating trade tensions with the United States. China is preparing for trade talks with the U.S., urging Washington to drop tariffs and demonstrate sincerity. China vows to defend justice in the talks amidst what it considers cripplingly high levies. These levies have reportedly shocked financial markets and caused a sharp slowdown in bilateral trade. Vice Premier He Lifeng expressed optimism about China's economy ahead of the talks, stating it was off to a good start this year. In response to trade tensions, China has released policy measures to boost domestic demand and support its economy. Wall Street experienced gains due to these high-level U.S.-China trade talks and Beijing's plans to cut interest rates. China is advancing financial reforms to support tech innovation, aiming for $40 billion in issuance through a dedicated bond platform. A new law on China's private economy is expected to unleash the potential of the non-state sector. Alibaba and Xiaohongshu have partnered ahead of an upcoming online shopping event. China is closely monitoring the India-Pakistan crisis, but is unlikely to directly intervene, maintaining deepening ties with both nations. Analysts suggest Beijing isn't likely to lead negotiations due to its strong relationship with Islamabad. IAEA study suggests China's hypersonic missiles can potentially be launched from space-based platforms, enabling them to strike global targets within 30 minutes. China is using the Sanya Incoherent Scatter Radar and Fast Telescope for a ground-based radar imaging experiment focused on the lunar South Pole, searching for lunar ice. Researchers contend that the COVID pandemic likely started in the wildlife trade, similar to the SARS outbreak, as China and the United States trade charges of a lab leak. Russia. Meanwhile, in Russia, President Vladimir Putin hosted Chinese President Xi Jinping in Moscow for his 11th visit. Xi expressed his intention to stand with Putin against hegemonic bullying and maintain a deep relationship during Moscow's WWA commemoration. The leaders exchanged warm words ahead of Victory Day commemorations. Xi described their meeting as in-depth, friendly, and fruitful. United States. Turning to the United States, the U.S. is preparing for trade talks with China. China urges Washington to drop tariffs and demonstrate sincerity. In response to escalating trade tensions with the United States, China has released policy measures to boost domestic demand and support its economy. Researchers contend that the COVID pandemic likely started in the wildlife trade, similar to the SARS outbreak, as China and the United States trade charges of a lab leak. The U.S. and China are closely monitoring the India-Pakistan crisis, maintaining deepening ties with both nations, but are unlikely to get directly involved. Taiwan. In Taiwan, the nation is marking the 80th anniversary of Victory in Europe Day by highlighting threats from China, whose leader, Xi Jinping, is in Russia for commemorations as Moscow continues its invasion of Ukraine. India, Pakistan. Regarding the India-Pakistan situation, China and the US are closely monitoring the crisis from the sidelines. Both powers are maintaining deepening ties on either side of the conflict, but are unlikely to get directly involved. Analysts suggest that Beijing isn't likely to lead negotiations between India and Pakistan due to its strong relationship with Islamabad. Global. Other. Globally, Fortescue Metals CEO Dino Otranto stated that underlying global supply challenges are being underestimated, despite demand from China plateauing. Military parades are taking place around the globe, with different countries sending different messages about the international order in the context of WWI. History. Observers say that while Joseph Nye's ideas about soft power were widely praised in China, his attitude towards Beijing was not as friendly as believed. Israel's military operations in Gaza and the West Bank are facing intense scrutiny. Strikes in Gaza have resulted in the deaths of at least 92 Palestinians. Tens of thousands have been displaced in the West Bank. The UN warns of potential war crimes and a looming humanitarian crisis. The UN has also voiced concerns about the possible annihilation of Palestinians in Gaza. An escalation is underway, with plans for an expanded operation and the mobilization of reserve troops. An Israeli strike and drone attack on a restaurant and market in Gaza killed at least 39 Palestinians. The ongoing blockade of humanitarian assistance to Gaza by Israel has forced aid organizations to shut down community soup kitchens. World Central Kitchen has halted food aid operations. The UN and its partners have condemned Israel's actions to seize control of aid to Gaza, where deliveries of food and medicine have been barred for months. A documentary identified an Israeli soldier as the shooter of Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh. The Biden administration has urged Israel to conduct a more rigorous investigation into her death. Israel's plan to capture more land in Gaza and relocate thousands of civilians has intensified a sense of hopelessness among Palestinians. International condemnation of Israel's actions is growing. More than 20 UN experts have demanded action to avert the annihilation of Palestinians. The Dutch government is now calling for an urgent review of the EU-Israel Association Agreement. Ireland's public broadcaster, VT, has requested a discussion with the European Broadcasting Union, EBU, about Israel's inclusion in the Eurovision Song Contest. This follows calls from 72 former contestants for a ban on the Israeli broadcaster Khan. In the United States, Mohsen Matawi, a Palestinian student arrested after leading protests at Columbia against Israel's war in Gaza, is launching an initiative to aid other immigrants facing. He was arrested while being interviewed about finalizing his U.S. citizenship. Yemen's Houthis have stated that a ceasefire deal with the U.S. does not include sparing Israel. This indicates that their shipping attacks will continue, despite the disruption to global trade. United Kingdom. As Europe commemorates the 80th anniversary of the end of WHAM, the UK's political landscape is active. A cross-party committee of MPs is seeking assurances from the Equalities Watchdog on guidance for transgender people following a Supreme Court ruling. More than 40 Labour MPs are protesting planned disability cuts, potentially triggering a significant rebellion. Jurors are currently deliberating in the Sycamore Gap tree felling trial. The Bank of England has lowered interest rates by a quarter point to 4.25% in response to potential economic impacts from Donald Trump's trade policies. The UK's failed Rwanda migrant deportation deal is under scrutiny, potentially offering lessons for the United States. Simultaneously, a dispute over national insurance exemptions for Indian short-term workers is overshadowing a multi-billion-pound free trade agreement with India. United States. Donald Trump has announced a full and comprehensive trade deal with the UK. Though experts are questioning its scope, Trump hailed the deal as a very big and exciting day for both countries. Analysis suggests his first-term tariffs disproportionately harmed farmers in rural areas, raising concerns about potential bankruptcies in a second term. The Liberal Democrats are insisting that any trade deal with the US must be approved by Parliament. The United States is reportedly in talks with Rwanda about accepting expelled migrants, mirroring the UK's challenges with a similar arrangement. Vice President J.D. Vance has called for direct talks between Moscow and Kyiv to end the war in Ukraine. Ukraine-Russia conflict. Despite a ceasefire declared by Moscow, both Ukraine and Russia have reported attacks. One person was killed and 2 wounded in the Sumy region by Russian forces. The temporary ceasefire, coinciding with the 80th anniversary of the WD defeat of Nazi Germany, is set to end at midnight on Saturday. Ukraine has accused Russia of violating its own truce after attacks on Sumy. Zelensky has not committed to Moscow's 3-day truce, reiterating his offer of a 30-day ceasefire. Negotiations are faltering, and understanding the failures of past peace talks is crucial for future attempts in Ukraine. With Ukraine considering peace, the situation in Bosnia serves as a warning about the risks of a flawed settlement, which could lead to long-term division and foreign control. Hundreds of families gathered in a Ukrainian parking lot to welcome home loved ones released from Russian prisons, a scene filled with both joy and anguish. Other nations. Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz is planning a visit to Ukraine. Japan's Not, the largest telecom operator, is launching a tender offer of $4,000 per share for all outstanding stock in NTT Data as part of an AI initiative. China and Moscow have engaged in discussions regarding a second gas pipeline project. Japan faces economic headwinds as the government contemplates consumption tax cut to boost the economy amid potential U.S. tariffs, a measure sparking debate among economists. Toyota anticipates a 35% decrease in net profit for 2025-26, partly due to potential vehicle tariffs under a Trump presidency. Rice prices continue to surge, hitting a record high for the 17th week at $4,233 per 5 kilograms. Amidst these shifts, white-collar jobs are losing their luster. Japan's airport infrastructure struggles to manage the tourist influx due to structural inefficiencies and outdated practices. In the space sector, Axel Space plans an IPO in June. To improve health security, Japan is establishing the Japan Institute for Health Security. A man gained entry to the 2025 Osaka Expo with a valid ticket from the cancelled 1940 Tokyo Exposition. In crime-related news, a man was arrested for a subway slashing incident, and 3 individuals were apprehended for attempting to transport suitcases full of hermit crabs. Separately, a man died in a boating accident off Yamaguchi Prefecture. In North Korea, multiple short-range missiles were launched from the east coast, with one traveling 800 kilometers and nearing Japan's exclusive economic zone. Turning to the United States, Joseph Nye, former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense and key figure in U.S.-Japan relations, has passed away at the age of 88. He was renowned for coining the term soft power. India and Pakistan are embroiled in escalating tensions after a terrorist attack in Kashmir resulted in 26 deaths. India conducted strikes against targets within Pakistan, while Pakistan alleges that India initiated the conflict by firing attack drones, wounding 4 soldiers, and that Pakistani forces shot down Indian drones over Pakistani cities. India claims to have intercepted drones and missiles fired by Pakistan. asserting its missile strikes targeted air defense systems. Analysts in India believe neither country wants a full-scale war, although Pakistan has vowed retaliation. The United States and other regional actors are working to de-escalate the situation, with President Trump offering to mediate. Global alignments are shifting, with Western military support for India increasing as China backs Pakistan. Social media posts, some misleading, are exacerbating the conflict. India is also reducing its reliance on low-cost arms from Russia. Security forces are positioned in WHAM, on the Indian-controlled side of Kashmir. India and the United Kingdom have been in free trade agreement negotiations since January 2022. Iran's foreign minister has urged restraint from both India and Pakistan amid the escalating conflict. Tensions are soaring as India conducted missile strikes on what it asserted were militant camps within Pakistan, citing retaliation for a deadly attack on tourists in Kashmir and focusing on Lashkar-e-Taiba's alleged connections to Islamabad. India claims these strikes were a response to a prior massacre in Kashmir, asserting that they also prevented attacks planned for over a dozen cities. The strikes were focused on militant camps inside Pakistan. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif has cautioned that there is limited room for de-escalation given drone incursions and the looming threat of an Indian attack. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has promised retaliation for Indian airstrikes that resulted in multiple deaths, authorizing the armed forces to respond. Pakistan claims its military has shot down 25 Indian drones, including 12 during a single overnight attack, presenting debris in Lahore, and denounces India's strikes as an act of war, vowing to retaliate. Pakistan further alleges that Chinese-made J-10C fighter jets were instrumental in downing 5 Indian aircraft. The Pakistan Aviation Authority temporarily suspended operations at Karachi Airport, and the government closed its airspace for commercial flights at Lahore and Islamabad airports following a blast in Lahore. Separately, the Border Security Force shot and killed a Pakistani intruder who was crossing the international border in Punjab. Germany is seeing its new government, led by Chancellor Friedrich Merz, place significant emphasis on foreign policy. Initial visits to France and Poland are planned, signaling a desire for a fresh start in international relations, even though potentially difficult discussions are expected. Domestically, Merz's coalition is exploring methods to counter the growing popularity of the Alternative for Germany (AfD) party. To enforce stricter migration policies, the government intends to increase the number of border police. Furthermore, a German agency will provide free expertise to Japanese startups through seminars held in 4 Japanese cities until November. Across Europe, echoes of historical oppression are resonating, particularly in the context of a strained relationship with the hostile U.S. administration. As the continent commemorates the 80th anniversary of Nazi Germany's defeat, it aims to carve out a position of stability amid these challenging circumstances. Brazil is experiencing a significant increase in urban scorpion populations, exacerbated by urbanization and climate change, leading to a 250% rise in reported stings from 2014 to 2014 to 2023, totaling over 1.1 million cases. In a matter concerning international relations, the Brazilian government has rejected a U.S. State Department request to classify the PCC and Comando Vermelho gangs as terrorist entities. This request occurred during discussions in Brasilia regarding U.S. immigration strategies. Shifting to environmental policy, a new law in the Amazon state of Rondônia benefits cattle ranchers who illegally transformed a substantial portion of the Jaci-Parana conservation area into grazing land. Moving to law enforcement, in Fortaleza, Brazilian police apprehended 3 young adults and a minor in connection with the killing of 4 individuals during a soccer field shootout. North Korea launched several projectiles into its eastern waters, suspected to be short-range ballistic missiles. The South Korean military detected the launches. These launches are thought to be tests of weapons potentially for export. Meanwhile, a South Korean presidential candidate is calling for revived dialogue between former US President Trump and Kim Jong-un. South Korea is responding to North Korea's loudspeaker broadcasts along the border. These broadcasts have been emitting ominous noises nearly daily since July. Seoul is employing a noise map to strategically counter the sonic aggression. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te has likened Taiwan's present circumstances to those of European nations preceding World War II, pointing out similar dangers and stressing the need to defend shared principles and tackle shared issues. Meanwhile, regarding Israel and Gaza, European leaders and humanitarian organizations have criticized Israel's plans to oversee humanitarian aid distribution in Gaza and to engage private companies in food delivery to families, expressing concerns about potential disruptions to the established aid system. The European Union, United States, and China are intertwined in a complex economic relationship, as highlighted by the New York Times' exploration of European business owners' anxieties surrounding the U.S.-China trade war and the consequences of U.S. tariffs on their businesses. Concurrently, some analysts suggest that the recent European blackout could benefit Chinese energy firms, which lead the way in providing energy storage and grid-forming technologies needed to avert widespread power outages. Australia is prioritizing renewable energy development following Labour's recent election win, signaling an ambition to become a leader in clean energy technology and implementation. In a somber note from Australia, 2 individuals were found guilty in the murder of Cassius Turvey, an Indigenous teenager who tragically died 10 days after being attacked with a metal pole. In October 2022, a case which sparked national outrage and conversations about racial justice. Globally, the University of Queensland has launched a new online tool to monitor the movements of migratory animals, providing crucial data for policymakers to make informed conservation decisions. The tool tracks species like loggerhead turtles and humpback whales, offering insights into their migration patterns and habitat needs. The United States is set to host the knockout rounds of the 2025 Pacific Nations Cup. This tournament will determine 3 teams directly qualifying for the 27 Rugby World Cup. President Donald Trump is expected to announce a trade deal with Britain on Thursday. The United States is also a primary funding source for the British film and TV sector. It accounts for most of the nearly 90% of spending that comes from abroad. Turning to Britain, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has worked to reinforce ties between Europe and the United States. He has cultivated a relationship with President Trump over several months. The British film and TV industry faces potential harm from new duties. This is especially true given the past pandemic shutdowns and Hollywood strikes. The industry relies heavily on foreign investment, particularly from the United States. A trade agreement between the United States and Britain is anticipated to be announced by President Trump this Thursday. Fiji is seeing efforts from a New Zealand-based civil society group focused on improving conditions for garment workers. Despite a rising minimum wage, a Fijian union official notes that workers remain hesitant to engage, citing fear. In sports, Drua head coach Glenn Jackson is urging his players to capitalize on their recent momentum, coinciding with Fijian Mother's Day celebration. Police Commissioner Richard Chambers recently convened with his Fijian and Samoan counterparts to address shared concerns such as drug trafficking, customs protocols, intelligence exchange, and corruption. The nation mourns the loss of Auckland surgeon Dr. Parmanand, age 64, who is known for his pro bono heart surgery missions to Fiji. Amid ongoing political turmoil, Myanmar's military junta faces accusations of suppressing opposition. Medics, crucial to the anti-junta movement, have been targeted, exacerbating a healthcare crisis. Airstrikes continue despite a supposed ceasefire, After a recent deadly earthquake, international aid is critically lacking, with only $34 million received of the $75 million requested by the UN, severely impeding disaster relief. The Walt Disney Company is set to build a new theme park in the United Arab Emirates. This park will reside on Yas Island in Abu Dhabi. An Abu Dhabi developer will provide the funding. Yas Island already hosts SeaWorld and a popular water park. Denmark is summoning the top U.S. diplomat to explain reports of increased U.S. intelligence gathering activities targeting Greenland. In addition, 2 individuals will face trial in Bornholm under Denmark's new law from December 2023, which prohibits the improper treatment of religious texts, specifically related to burning a Quran. In the United States, a federal judge has blocked the deportation of non-citizens to Libya without proper due process. This decision responds to reports that the White House contemplated such deportations. The ruling emphasizes that deporting individuals to Libya without due process would violate the judge's existing court order. The western part of Libya is currently controlled by the internationally recognized government in Tripoli. Venezuelan authorities confirmed the departure of opposition members who had been residing in the Argentine embassy for over a year. The Interior Minister asserted that the exit was achieved through negotiation. He denied allegations of an international rescue operation. Uganda's World Food Programme, WFP, is halting food rations for 1 million refugees. This decision stems from a $50 funding gap caused by decreased aid. The WFP warns this could force refugees and asylum seekers to return to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, South Sudan, and Sudan where they fled from conflict. Singapore saw a 63-year-old man sentenced to jail for an indecent act against his foster son. The man claimed he needed to check the boy's body before allowing computer access. Meanwhile, the nation anticipates Prime Minister Wang's announcement of his government's composition. Adding to the political atmosphere, images featuring Ong Ye Kung and Chi Hong Tat, alongside a convicted money launderer, have stirred public controversy. Saudi Arabia's Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Adel Al-Jubeir, traveled to India. The visit focused on collaborative counter-terrorism strategies. Discussions were held in the context of Operation Sindoor. Across African nations, a looming debt crisis threatens economic stability, compounded by the potential withdrawal of US aid from numerous countries. Turning to South Africa, Kruger National Park reported a devastating loss of at least 123 vultures. The birds died after feeding on an elephant carcass laced with agricultural pesticides by poachers. Authorities believe the poachers intentionally poisoned the elephant to kill vultures, preventing them from circling and alerting rangers to the illegal activity. The incident highlights the ongoing struggle against poaching and its unintended consequences on the wider ecosystem. The Philippines is currently grappling with a shortage of Catholic priests, leading to hopes that the election of a Filipino pope might inspire more men to enter the priesthood. Meanwhile, tensions remain high with China over the contested Scarborough Shoal. Beijing has cautioned the Philippines against further provocative acts after a Philippine vessel was stopped in the vicinity. In response, Manila has strongly denounced what it characterizes as Chinese harassment within the disputed area. In Albania, the main opposition leader has hired campaign consultants linked to Trump and a lobbying firm for the upcoming May 11 parliamentary election. Turning to Colombia, Bogotá is facing increased pressure to intensify efforts against the recruitment of minors by armed groups. The grim realities in El Salvador, where disappearances into prisons are common, are now sparking debate in the United States, following President Trump's policy of sending migrants to a Salvadoran prison. In the United Kingdom, the British Parliament held discussions on escalating tensions between India and Pakistan. triggered by the Pahalgam terror attack and Operation Sindoor. Recognizing the potential impact on the large Indian and Pakistani communities within the UK, meanwhile, in Indonesia, the governor of West Java's proposal to mandate sterilization for impoverished attention shifts to Italy, where Cardinal Pietro Parolin is currently the leading candidate to succeed Pope Francis. The legal saga in Kiribati continues, keeping an Australian judge separated from his family. Mexico City is preparing to host over 5 million visitors for the 2026 FIFA World Cup, where the opening match will take place. In New Zealand, the sheep population still exceeds the human population, though the gap is narrowing, and a 9-member weightlifting team will represent the nation at the 2025 Pacific Mini-Games in Palau. Shifting to the Solomon Islands, a political scientist suggests the rise of younger politicians could foster greater governmental stability. In Sri Lanka, the National People's Power is emerging as the largest party in local councils, following the Sri Lankan President's Party's continued winning streak in local elections, which now faces challenges in forming administration. The situation in Sudan is tense, with a drone strike on the port, Sudan naval base raising concerns about disruptions to humanitarian aid and potential escalation, implicating the United Arab Emirates. Moving to Syria, President Ahmed al-Shara revealed during his first European visit that Syria has engaged in indirect talks with Israel, aiming to de-escalate tensions amidst ongoing Israeli attacks within Syrian territory. 2 doctors in Thailand have been suspended due to discrepancies between their medical reports and the actual condition of ex-Prime Minister Thaksin during his hospital stay. Finally, on the global economic front, Asian shares saw moderate gains following a lackluster performance on Wall Street, with most shares edging higher after the Federal Reserve decided to maintain its key interest rate. And that's a wrap for today's news, because even headlines need a nap. Stay curious, stay kind, and let the noise fade as you find your quiet. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you next time on WHAM Today.